Hey guys, it's Jason, one of your small group leaders for high school. Welcome to Revolution. Tonight we have Kyle leading us in worship, and we've got TB and Marissa leading us through a lesson on acting justly. So, without further ado, here's Kyle.
You unravel me with a melody. You surround me with a song of deliverance from my enemies, till all my fears are gone. 'Cause I'm no longer a slave to fear, 'cause I am a child of God. 'Cause I'm no longer a slave to fear, 'cause I am a child of God. From my mother's womb, you have chosen me. Your love has called my name. 'Cause I've been born again into your family. Your blood flows through my veins. 'Cause I'm no longer a slave to fear, 'cause I am a child of God. 'Cause I'm no longer a slave to fear, 'cause I am a child of God. 'Cause I'm no longer a slave to fear, 'cause I am a child of God. 'Cause I'm no longer a slave to fear, 'cause I am a child of God. Cause I am surrounded by the arms of the Father. 'Cause I am surrounded by songs of deliverance. 'Cause we've been liberated from our bondage. 'Cause I am a child of God. 'Cause I'm no longer a slave to fear. 'Cause I am a child of God.
Hello, Revolution. Marissa here with the one, the only Taylor Brown.
The one, the only.
T. Bizzle. Teddy Bear.
Teddy
Some
Bear.
people have called
We're
it.
gonna bring. We'll
We're
bring
gonna
back
bring it back.
Teddy Bear.
We're going to bring it back.
I-
It's from years ago.
I hope that had died during the quarantine, but it's resurrected.
Alive and well.
Thanks for that.
So, if you don't know, many, many moons ago, on galaxies far, far away, I worked at an eye doctor's office.
That's right.
And trust me, it's as exciting as it sounds. Really. Really. So I really did love it though. I got to learn about all the intricacies of the eyes, how glasses are made, the lenses, all the different extras you can put on the lenses. Shoot, I can't think of one right now. But
So-
the blue light coating, for the glasses, for the computers.
So if we had glasses or eye trivia,
Right here. I would be the winner, dude.
You would win.
There would be
That's
no
awesome.
competition. Everybody else would be stuck at 0, and I'd be at 500 because I know so much about eyes. I really do miss it sometimes because I loved learning about it. So, sunglasses, if you're outside a lot, because this is summer, somehow we were locked inside, and then time still moved, and now we're in the middle of June, which is crazy. Sunglasses, they can be this thing called polarized. Have you ever heard of this?
I've heard it. I've heard
I've
it.
before. So these kind of sunglasses are really, really great for people who are outside often, people who play sports, people who fish, people who are outside a lot. And honestly, I would recommend them to anybody if you want my personal doctoral opinion.
Your eye doctor experience.
My eye
opinion.
doctor experienced opinion. And so polarized, it just means that there's a chemical laminate coating over them, and basically they take glare off of objects around them. So they take the surface off, they help you see below the surface. I'm sorry I'm touching my
It's
face.
that quote from The Office of explain it to me like I'm 5.
Explain it to you
That's-
yeah, I'm trying really hard. It's really difficult. I'm covering my face a lot because I'm talking about glasses. You can imagine how I was with my patients that I was sitting with. I was just doing this the whole time. So anyway, polarized lenses, they help us see things below the surface. And so here's why I'm saying all this. Here's why I'm talking about this. Because I think when we look at justice, it can almost be like we're wearing regular sunglasses. It can feel like this really big problem that's really, really blurry that we can sometimes get out of focus. But when we use the Bible to help us look at justice, it gets really clear, and we see where our role is, and we see what our job is, what we are supposed to do. And so for the past week or so, or for the past couple weeks, we've been talking about this idea of justice and trying to really understand what it means and how we can act justly. And so tonight we are talking about just how to do that and to find out what it really looks like for us to do that and act justly.
And we've been looking at some different verses, and one big one we've looked at is Micah 6:8. And we've been talking a lot about sort of some elements of this. Last week we talked about love mercy and what that looks like. And the week before that we talked about just how Micah 6:8 calls us to just do something. More than anything, it calls us to not have inaction, but to have action. And we're going to continue that sort of train of thought, that thinking tonight, by talking a little bit about what it looks like to act justly. You can see that in what Micah says. And to help us, we're going to look at a couple different verses. Now, we've been talking a lot about Micah, and we've said that Micah was a prophet. Once again, not like the money-making, that kind of prophet, but a prophet, Prophet.
That's how you spell it?
That's how you spell it.
Oh.
I hope I spelled it right, or we're going to have to
There
go
we
back
go.
and edit this. But we're talking about how Micah was a prophet, someone who was delivered a message from God to tell to other people. And I want to continue by talking about another prophet.
The money kind.
I wish the money kind.
God,
Yeah,
sorry.
we're not Dave Ramsey, so we can't talk
Dang
about
it.
that. But we're going to talk about another prophet named Amos. And this prophet named Amos, when we're talking about this idea of what you were saying, of looking past the surface and looking at deeper what it looks like, what justice really looks like. This is exactly what Amos was getting at, what Amos's mission was. Once again, he was like Micah was delivered a message by God to tell to other people,
like a prophet.
Exactly,
Got it.
Prophet.
Okay,
and so I want us to look at just a chunk of what Amos said. And this is in the Message translation of the Bible. So those of you who might be watching, like, what are you talking about? Different translation. So the Bible is written in different translations. It's not like one's false and one's true. It's just different ways. Once again, talking about different ways to see things, different ways to read what the words actually were written thousands of years ago. So we're going to look at one translation, a few verses from Amos, and I'm going to warn you now, it's pretty strong. Amos,
like me.
Yeah, like Marissa. That's strong like Marissa. Amos isn't messing around here, and I want us to read this, and we're going to talk a little bit about what it means. This is what Amos says. This is Amos 5:21 through 24. It says, I can't stand your religious meetings. I'm fed up with your conferences and conventions. I want nothing to do with your religion projects, your pretentious slogans and goals. I'm sick of your fundraising schemes, your public relations and image making. I've had all I can take of your noisy ego music. When was the last time you sang to me? Do you know what I want? I want justice, oceans of it. I want fairness, rivers of it. That's what I want. That's all I want.
Whew, that's way stronger than me.
Yeah, it's way stronger than even you. Yeah, this is strong what Amos is saying here. And we can look at this at first glance and go, okay, so whoa, does this mean like we need to stop gathering for a revolution and we need to stop singing music and we need to stop doing all these things and we just need to abandon it all? Well, not necessarily. Let's talk a little bit. Let's dive in a little bit what Amos was talking about when it comes to this idea of acting justly. So context matters here. Context matters in all of our verses, but especially this one. See, during this time, who Amos was speaking to was a group of people who had a more luxurious or wealthier lifestyle, and these people were oppressing, meaning they were diminishing, they were devaluing, they were silencing, they were putting down others who weren't as wealthy, others who maybe didn't have as much resources, didn't have as much money. They were not living lives that were lives of justice, as we've been talking about. Remember, the definition of justice, we've been saying, is making wrong things right. These people were not doing that. They did not have an eye for others, especially an eye for the least of these. And so when Amos is talking, Amos is saying, I'm tired of your gathering and your singing and all this stuff that's all about you. And I'm tired of seeing this and making it all about you and making it all about God, but really you're not, because you're oppressing others. You're not looking towards others. You're not trying to help other people. That's what Amos is really saying. Amos isn't necessarily talking about their actual actions and that the actions themselves are wrong. What Amos is getting at is the heart behind the action, that something's off there. That's what Amos is getting at. He's not just getting at the actual actions, but he's saying that what we believe and our actions are super important. That it's not just all about what we do on the outside, but it's about having a heart behind what we're doing. So before we move on, I want you to hear us that the goal of this isn't for you to begrudgingly get up and begrudgingly serve and do something that would make, and as we've been using the term, an advocate of justice. That's not necessarily what we're saying. We're saying action's a part of it, but action's not the entire part of it. There's this intent and this belief behind what you're doing that has to follow. And that's what Amos is getting at here. It's that value internally matters just as much as our actions externally. And another place where this word action becomes super important is the book of James. So Amos was a prophet before Jesus in the Old Testament. Now we're going to jump to the book of James in the Bible. James is written after Jesus was already on this earth and rose again into heaven. James, it's suggested by the title, although there's some scholars, some really smart people, smarter than us, who will debate about this, what the book of James is written by, but most would agree that it's Jesus' half-brother James that wrote this. And one of the themes of the book of James was action, the importance of action. Once again, like Amos said, action behind a real, genuine, heartfelt intent. And so I want to read a chunk from James, because I think this really hits on as well this idea of acting justly and what we're talking about. Here's what it says in James 1:22-27. It says, "Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. Anyone who listens to the word but does not do what it says is like someone who looks at his face in a mirror and, after looking at himself, goes away and immediately forgets what he looks like. But whoever looks intently into the perfect law that gives freedom and continues in it, not forgetting what they have heard, but doing it, they will be blessed in what they do. Those who consider themselves religious and yet do not keep a tight rein on their tongues deceive themselves, and their religion is worthless. Religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this: to look after orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world. So once again, you can even see here that the theme of what James is saying is about action. It's about not just listening and knowing what the word says, but doing something, following through, having action behind it. And this isn't action to get noticed or notoriety or to get recognized. This is action to, like James said, that one, affirms the faith that you have, that lives out of the overflow of God's love and the overflow of your relationship with Him, lives out this faith that's in you. But second, it's also something to help other people. It's actions that help others. Notice the very end of that verse. James says that religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this. And he lists a description. He says, to look after orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world. Now, is James specifically saying, like, it's only orphans and widows and no one else? No, that's not what he's trying to say here. He's using that as an example, where he names back in biblical times two of the most vulnerable populations and two of the biggest populations that really could not help themselves. I know that's an idea that some of us have. Well, why don't people work harder? Why don't they just try harder? But these are two populations back in biblical times that it really doesn't matter how hard they tried. They had a long and a huge uphill battle. And so James says those two populations specifically to challenge those reading and listening to what he's saying to really question is their action leading to something? And is their action leading to help others, especially helping others that are most vulnerable, that have the toughest road, that are being oppressed, that you can fill in the blank there. And so it's one thing to say that we believe in God. This is another thing that James is getting at. It's one thing to say that we believe in God. It's another thing to say that we are following God. Because the difference between belief and following is action. Because there's an action behind when we follow. Think of Jesus' first disciples. They didn't just believe that he was who he said he was. They literally got up, left their families and their jobs and everything behind, and literally followed him. See, we're called to something more. We're called to action. We're called to act justly. And that means, yes, doing something, but it means having action behind what we believe. There's a question I want you to just think about before we move on. We talk about some practical ways that this looks. I want you to ask yourself this question: is there action behind what I believe? Just stop and think about it. Is there action behind what you believe? This faith that you have, what you believe about who God is and who Jesus says He is. Is there action behind that? What are you doing to help others? What are you doing to speak up for those that cannot speak for themselves or are being silenced? What are you doing to help and assist those who cannot necessarily help themselves, who have too tough of a road or too many obstacles? What are you doing? Are you putting action behind what you believe?
Whew. So there's this guy, his name is Gary Haugen, okay, and he runs this company called International Justice Mission.
Awesome.
He is so great, yeah. So here's what they do. They partner with lawmakers and lawyers in these countries with severe poverty. They partner with them and they help bring people out of human trafficking, out of slavery, out of oppressed situations, and into freedom, which is really, 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 really awesome. It's an awesome company. I've said that 4 times, but check them out. And so he has this quote. It says this: I have come to see questions about suffering in the world, not so much as questions of God's character, but as questions about the obedience and faith of God's people. So here's what this is saying. When it comes to faith and when it comes to justice, God has given us a job. God has given us a responsibility. As we've learned so far, our responsibility is to do something, to love mercy, just like Calvin and Taylor talked about last week, and to act justly. That is what our responsibility is. That is what our job is. That's what our role is. That is an act of obedience towards God. And so, but how do we do that, right? Like, what does that really mean? God's word speaks about helping orphans and widows, but that's not it, remember? It's helping the poor, helping the oppressed, helping those that are voiceless or feel helpless, helping the weak, the fatherless, the refugee, the foreigner. But what exactly do we do? So I have some friends who are going to talk about ways that they've done this, but I want to introduce to you 3 different ways that we think this can happen. So we think this can happen physically, by meeting people's physical needs, like food and shelter and water. We also think that this can happen relationally, being a mentor for some crazy young kids on Sunday mornings, or going to the nursing homes and sitting with some elderly people once a week. And then finally, we think this can happen systemically. We think this can happen by really digging deeper into this and figuring out all of the bigger things about injustices that are happening in the world, and realizing that it's just too big a job for one person. So we're going to have some friends talk to you more about how they've done these things and the difference it's made in their own lives. And we'll be back with you.
I'm Mia Acevedo, and a way we could act justly in a physical way would be things like Shoes of Hope or Eat, Pray, Love, which is helping people in a way that meets their physical needs. One of the first steps we could take towards justice to help meet people's physical needs would be to hand out food, water, or hygiene bags to the homeless or people in need. You could serve food at a local soup kitchen, deliver food to families in need during the holidays, rally your friends, family, or church to provide free school supplies. You could also coordinate a Christmas toy drive. A way I've done this in my own life was when I participated in Eat, Pray, Love. The difference it's made in my own life has been that I got to come every week and serve people and see how happy it makes them. The difference that I think it made in the lives of others is that it would fill them with happiness and joy, and you could see it reflecting off their faces, and it's just the most rewarding experience.
Hey y'all, if you don't know me, I'm Caitlin. I work with the kindergarten boys on Sunday morning, and I'm going to talk about why that has to do anything with justice. So, kindergarten boys are really crazy, and that's helped me a lot because now I know patience better, and it helps the community because I'm teaching these kids about Jesus, and they're going to go out and they're going to tell their friends, and they're going to be like, whoa, what we heard today on Sunday morning, that was super duper cool. And it helps me help the community, because now that I'm more patient and slower to anger, then because of them, I will be more patient and slower to anger and know how to show love to everybody, no matter how difficult.
Hi there, I'm Chloe Evans. I'm a senior graduating from North Fort Myers High School, and I'm super excited to talk to you guys this week about how we can act justly to the issues of oppression that are going on in our country today. If we take a deeper dive into the actual issues, the problem is way bigger than you may think it is, so super excited to talk about it. While so much can be done for justice, through one-on-one interactions, local projects, and short-term initiatives, fighting for justice often requires a much deeper dive into the systemic, deeply rooted issues that cause injustice on a large scale. This might require political involvement, activism, protests, and of course, consistent and focused prayer. What are some ways we can do this? We can boycott oppressive or unjust facilities and businesses. We can campaign by writing letters, making phone calls, and contacting our representatives that can legislate change. We can use our voices. As soon as you are old enough to vote, do it. You don't even need to be 18 to register to vote. And lastly, and probably most importantly, we can pray for change and for wisdom to know how to move in accordance with God's mission. A couple ways that I've been using my voice to make change is I've been signing petitions, sharing petitions, calling our representatives, telling other people to call our representatives. I created the hashtag Coffee Change for Change. And basically, that's the idea that if I have enough money, a broke high school student to get coffee on my way to work, then I have enough money to donate to an organization that will help the oppressed. So I made a flyer, I posted on my Instagram, and then a whole bunch of my friends and the people that follow me were sending me screenshots of them donating their coffee money to different organizations. I donated to the Color of Change, and it was just $7 that I would have spent on a coffee and like a bagel that morning. And instead of doing that, I donated it, and now people get to use that to help create change across our country. So yeah, thanks for letting me share with you.
Well, thank you so much to those that shared. I'm so proud of our students who, in lots of creative ways too. That's the other thing. Is these are creative ways that they are really living out these three levels of what we say is how to act justly. And so here's what we want to encourage you to as we close our time together. You heard it just now. Even though you're just a middle schooler, even though you're just a high schooler, you are equipped and you are ready to do big things with God's help. You just saw 3 examples of students, middle and high schoolers, just like you, who are able to do these things and live a life that is an advocate of justice for others. So here's what I want to encourage you to do. I want to encourage you to maybe you need to go back and watch them again, but pick one of the 3 levels that stood out to you the most. Maybe you really resonated with helping people with physical needs, with food, water, shelter. Maybe relationally stood out to you. Maybe you have a gift of being relational and you want to live that out by just hanging out with younger kids or hanging out with people in nursing homes or whatever it might be. Or third, maybe you feel this compelling right now to really begin seeing what you can do towards this systemic issue when it comes to justice. This issue that maybe it's not just based on one relationship or one need met, but it's a little bit bigger. Maybe you feel like you want to jump in and start doing things to help with that. So we want to invite you to pick which one stood out to you the most, and which one you feel right now that God might be calling you to step into. And then we want to invite you to determine what is your best next step when it comes to each of those. For example, maybe for physical needs, maybe it's figuring out how you can help with that within our youth ministry, or maybe it's figuring out how to help within our church. Of opportunities, we're giving away food on Wednesdays in the month of June. We're going to Suncoast, I believe, on Mondays and Thursdays to give meals. What does that look like for you to be able to get involved in that? Systemic, maybe it's reading up on issues and learning a little bit more about what are systemic problems that are in our society. Maybe it's following people on social media that are really leading experts and thoughtful, amazing voices on these topics and on these issues. Maybe you want to follow them. Maybe you want to read up more about this and learn more. But whatever it is, whatever the level that you identify with, whatever the next step is, we want to encourage you that you are not too young, that you are gifted enough, not because of your own ability, but because of what God can empower in you to do. And when you partner with Him and His Spirit living in you, you can do amazing things. So we encourage you not only to just do something, not only to love mercy, but to act justly in a way that makes a practical difference for the person next to you and for maybe even others in our world that you're never going to see.
Yeah, and honestly, even ourselves.
Absolutely, even ourselves. We get something out of this too. While that's not the main goal, we absolutely benefit from this too. We learn, we become closer to Jesus, I believe.
Yeah.
So will you take up the challenge? Will you challenge yourself to live this out? Let me pray for us. God, we thank you for challenging words from prophets long ago that honestly could have been written yesterday. God, we thank you for strong words, strong challenges from Mike and Amos and everyone else. God, these words that resonate in our minds and in our hearts today as we look at a world that has pain in it, has brokenness. God, we ask that you would be able to help us, one, remember that you are not distant from this world, but you are with us in it. And God, I ask that you would empower those of us listening, that we might be moved right now to act justly in a way that makes a practical difference, whether it be physically or relationally or in a systemic way. And God, I pray for the courage for the middle school or the high schooler listening, for them to figure out what's next when it comes to acting on this. for them to make the next best step, for you to lead them and guide them. God, we ask for the courage to step out and do this, even when it seems overwhelming and even when it seems scary. God, we ask that you would give peace about this, that whichever student listening that this is for, that they would know that it's you calling them to this, that it's your voice speaking to them and you moving in their heart right now. God, we thank you that you are a God of justice, that you're a God that doesn't turn a blind eye, but you're a God that cares about making wrong things right in our world. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Thanks for watching.
Hey, it's Jason again. Just wanted to say thank you for joining us tonight and reminding everybody that if you're having trouble finding us on Facebook or Instagram, we also have our YouTube channel, so check that out as well. We look forward to seeing you again next week, hopefully soon to be in person. Stay tuned.